From the boots walking among the streets of Liberty City to beyond the stars, not in a galaxy far, far away, but beyond our own galaxy on an unknown superweapon. That is also a ring. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the JDF Podcast. This is an episodic review series where I can review anything, but not everything. That includes monster movies, both big and small, anime, and video games. In order to understand this game, we first need to talk about the box that it originally came with. And it starts with one man and a company. I'm using a console's documentary and Wikipedia as a source, by the way. If any of these are incorrect, please put the corrections in the comment section below. As stated in episode 59, Microsoft Corporation was founded by childhood friends Paul Allen and William Henry Gates III, or Bill Gates, or as I like to call him Billy, on April 9, 1975. Then it had a dash between micro and soft, which is short for microcomputer software, believe it or not. And that's what it was for the rest of the 20th century. The company entered the PC market with the original Windows 1.0 today, in 1985. 5 years later, they introduced Microsoft Office, such as Word and Excel. We all used them in our school days one way or another. So, Billy was ambitious, very ambitious to the point when in 1995, Windows 95 was big, same with Windows 98 3 years later. Yet it didn't save them from scrutiny from the government in terms of being a monopoly on the software side of things. Boy, things haven't changed in the past 30 years, haven't they? Nonetheless, they were on top of the PC world in terms of software and products. Already within Microsoft, as the new millennium dawned, the people were itching to get into the video game market. Before that, the company saw success in Microsoft Flight Simulator and Age of Empires, two very popular and successful titles respectively. Around that same time, Sony, a tech company themselves, had a foothold within the gaming market thanks to the success of the PlayStation. It was during the announcement of the PlayStation 2 that Billy was, in a sense, threatened by this, as if he took it personally. Thus, the DirectX project was born, with Otto Burks, Kevin Bunches, Ted Hase, and Seamus Backley leading the project, though at first it was codenamed Midway, referencing the Battle of Midway of World War II. Which is ironic considering that Microsoft wanted to surpass Sony and their console, go figure. The force job with DirectX was simple: standardize game development using Windows going forward. A nice goal, but they wanted to go even further. They wanted to create something that DirectX can be powered on. A box, if you will. Yet, no one, and I mean no one, believed that Microsoft would even attempt or even produce a game console. This was evident when the DirectX team went around the offices trying to pitch the idea of such a concept, which often led to people avoiding them and telling the four to f*** off. I'm paraphrasing here. Anyhow, the four were very determined to get this concept off the ground. They disagreed with MS executive Craig Mundy that it should run off of Windows CE, but using a good amount of the Windows budget into something that can be built from the ground up using repurposed PC hardware components was something that most, if not everyone, would be sold on. However, they did get the attention of one man, Ed Fries, the head of Microsoft's gaming division at the time, who proposed that the game box should be disguised as a PC, to which he loved and was on board. He also liked the idea of a console using PC hardware parts despite what the manufacturing cost would be. Even though Bill Gates was very supportive of the gaming division, most within MS would call it the coffin box, given that if anyone worked on it, it would cost them their jobs. But the DirectX team persisted anyway. The real obstacle was getting one man to approve on the gaming console, Bill Gates himself. Which is easy enough considering that Billy was looking for a way to compete with Sony's PlayStation and the upcoming PlayStation 2. And so, there would be a little competition of which department at Microsoft would be developing the company's first game console in front of the boss himself, Billy. Both teams, the Windows and gaming divisions, presented their ideas to Bill. The latter proposed that they should build a console and enter the market, not to copy what the competition was doing, but to break the foundation. They also tried to convince him that large amounts of data can be stored and the hard drive would not really be the focus seeing as there is no benefit. They also tried to convince him of one thing, Ethernet, where one console can link with the internet instead of the usual dial-up and link with another console in the same room, to which that would inadvertently create LAN, local area network, parties. And yet, to their horror, Billy was not impressed. This is coming from a savvy and brutal businessman like him. However, there was hope when the DirectX team created a mini PC, kind of like the components of a console, and presented it to Bill. And he was ecstatic. And to drive it on home, they put a copy of the original Tomb Raider within the prototype, and it worked. Basically like an emulator that we are familiar with today. And because of that, the DirectX team won. However, the issue was this. While Billy was on board, Steve Ballmer, a hype man for Microsoft's products, and I do mean that in a literal sense, good lord, was against it. As the CEO position was gradual, he saw Microsoft itself as a software company, not a hardware company. In other words, he didn't believe that they would be successful and would ruin the company as a whole. And he wasn't going to let a bunch of gamers and game developers create something that, in his eyes, was risky. But later on, as both he and Billy thought about it, they wanted to do new things in the gaming market. And so, it was decided that the project was given a green light, no pun intended. But there were some hurdles. A lot of hurdles. Around that time, GDC 2000, the Game Developers Conference, was coming up on March 10, 2000, and the developers were going to be the critics. Billy, actually, mentioned a console in an interview in 1999 stating that we wanted the system to be the platform of choice for the best and most creative game developers in the world. A bold claim, but the DirectX team did not know how to make a console, which is understandably not an easy job to do. Finding another company to build hardware like Microsoft's console was not easy also. So, corporate being corporate, Microsoft thought they could just buy some companies. Sony was a no-go, and Sega was on its way out of the console market. Nintendo, Squaresoft, before they merged with Enix, and Electronic Arts, EA, were out of the question. But then, it was like a ding-dong moment for them where they realized this. Microsoft was going to have to make the console themselves. And so, the DirectX team got to work on the prototype. Though it would have a name around this time. Many names are thrown around. Windows Entertainment Project, MS Total Gaming, MS Interactive Network Device, MS Interactive Center, the whole shebang. But later on, it was shortened to just Xbox. Little did anyone know, that name would stick. As the prototype was being developed, and as Ted, Nat, and Otto left the project, another, J. Alex, came in with an idea. The console would support broadband as a way to connect to the internet and play online. Inside of American households in 1999, less people had broadband, and the majority was using the infamous dial-up. Oh, God, dial-up. But, once again, Billy loved it. But now, here comes the most trickiest part of them all. The Xbox, the original idea at the time, was going to run Windows. Like the Windows that you see on your PC. And that, to many, was a stupid idea. Nobody wanted that, even in their living rooms. The solution was to use a code that would be easier to make and play games on and for the console itself. But getting that was not an easy task. The DirectX team, now the Xbox team, did not have access to such code, and the Windows team were not going to share it. So they just decided to just steal it and make modifications to it. Okay. But in order to do that, they had to pitch the idea to both Steve Ballmer and the boss himself, Bill. And so, on February 14, 2000, a meeting was called and the team had to inform Billy on the changes that the Xbox was going to have. And needless to say, they were furious. Billy more so since he has a history of furious outbursts. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, as it was called, not because of mobsters shooting Tommy guns into their backs and shotguns firing on their dead corpses, but because of the plans that the crews had on that day. You know what kind of plans. But one question was asked about Sony taking over the homes. To Billy, that was more insulting than whatever the hell his teams were doing. And to that end, he calmed down and fully supported the project, giving it a $1 billion fund. After that, they went on to develop and showcase the prototype at GDC 2000, which was a little X-shaped box, by the way, and that son of a bitch was 40 pounds. And it was well received, impressing many with the ideas of the Ethernet port and easy-to-use development tools being presented. With that done, only one thing is left, and that is to create a final design, because that big X ain't gonna cut it. After many tweaks, they came to a final design, Still with an X, but at least it was a small black box with a green Xbox logo on the top with the controller. Oh, sweet God's mother, that controller. The controller was like the DualShock controller for the PlayStation, but it had an Xbox button, the D-pad was under the left analog stick, white and black buttons, and it was chunky. How chunky? Bigger than your hand, big as your brain, though some refuse to use it today. Back then, the standard controller would be called Fatty, but today, many gamers alike, including myself, would call it the Duke, a fitting name because, look up a picture of it, please. Anyhow, so with all of that out of the way, let's get into the other thing that is left for Microsoft. Presentation. At CES 2001, Bill Gates, with special guest Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, the then World Wrestling Federation was going on a hot streak in the Attitude Era, which was around this time, officially unveiled the Xbox. Later at E3 in the same year, MS announced the release date and the price for the console. But here's the thing, they need games to go with the console itself. So they decided to buy a bunch of gaming studios that would help create the Xbox's first games as launch titles. Games such as Air Force Delta 1, Dead or Alive 3, Project Gotham Racing, and Fusion Frenzy, to name a few. One of them would be something that no one would ever expect. And here we come to development of this specific game. Before what they ended up becoming today, Bungie Studio, founded in May of 1991 in Chicago, was a 15-employee development studio that was already known by a good portion of PC gamers. The original Marathon trilogy and Myth: The Fallen Lords comes to mind. However, the former would be interesting, because the studio was thinking of making an indirect successor to that franchise, even though co-founder of Bungie, Jason Jones, described it as a natural extension of Marathon, which would have turned out to be something along the lines of Quake. After the completion of Myth and during the development of its sequel, Myth 2 Soulblighter, Jones dedicated much of the latter's production to many of the company's designers to this new project that he was working on. The main thing with the project is that the game was going to be RTS-based, real-time strategy, with the science fiction setting, realistic physics simulations, and 3D terrain. It initially had the working title Armor, then Monkey Nuts, don't ask, then to Blam. So I guess Jason didn't want to tell his mother. Anyhow, through this development process, Bungie added a mode where the camera would be attached to the individual units, including the player, and allowed the player to control the vehicle rather than the computer taking the wheel like it was impersonating Jesus. It was because of that in mid-1998, the game was changed from real-time strategy to a third-person shooter. The game was shown off to an audience at Macworld Conference and Expo in 1999 by the project's leader Jason Jones himself and the project's writer, Joseph Staten. This was possible by Peter Temte, I hope I said that right, the executive vice president at Bungie at the time, using his contacts to showcase there because of his former position at Apple. Before that, the title had no permanent name. Many names were thrown around, like the Santa Machine, Solipsis, I hope I said that right, the Crystal Palace, Heart Vacuum, Star Maker, and Star Shield. A branding firm that was hired by Bungie came up with the name Covenant. It was not accepted, but the name would stay as one of the main antagonists of the game, keyword one of them, when the studio's artist, Paul Russell, suggested one of the names after the world the factions will be fighting on, Halo. By the way, if you hear some crickets in the background, don't worry about that. Think of it as some ambience. Anyhow, some stated that it sounded like a shampoo product, the other names didn't count, but the game's designer, Marcus Leto, I hope I said that right, stated, it described enough about what our intent was for this universe in a way that created this sense of mystery. And so, the name stuck, and it was presented at Macworld, announcing that it will be released for Mac OS and Windows at the same time. As Halo continued its development, it was promised to have an open-world environment with plenty of missions to do and perform, and many other things. The game was showcased once more at E3 2000, still being presented as a third-person shooter, but sometime after E3, things and plans would change. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft was acquiring studios to create games for their brand new box with an X on the top. And, around this time, Bungie, during the development of this game, was financially sinking into the toilet. After its December 1998 release, Myth 2 had a glitch where if a save file was deleted, it would, in turn, f up your entire PC. It was so bad, Bungie themselves had to recall over 200,000 copies to fix it. But the recalls were not cheap, costing them $800,000 in the process. Bungie sold their share in publishing rights to Take-Two Interactive, watch my previous review on their background, but that wasn't enough. Out of options, Peter called Ed Fries, the head of Microsoft Game Studios. Fries negotiated an agreement with Take-Two, and after that, Microsoft announced the acquisition of Bungie Studio on June 19, 2000, with their upcoming title Halo as one of their launch titles. And then after this, oh boy. Well, during Halo's latter stages of its production, Jason would describe it as like a cathedral self-assembling out of a hurricane, but I would describe it as mental. Let me explain. Because of the acquisition, Bungie was given until the Xbox's launch in late 2001 to complete the game. You know, corporate being corporate, and it wouldn't be the last time this would happen, trust me. What was originally going to be a third-person shooter turned into a first-person shooter, thanks to Jason pushing for it. And oh sweet God's mother, there were problems. Not because of the fact that merely playing an FPS game on a console was ridiculous at the time, let alone rare, but because trying to make the game work using that brain-sized Duke controller. Not only that, other Bungie projects had to be scrapped in order to get this damn game working. Hell, Jamie Greisinger, I hope I said that right, one of the designers, said that they didn't have time to unpack their belongings when the Bungie team moved to the Microsoft campus at Redmond, Washington because they were so busy. But wait, dear listener or dear viewer, it gets worse. As the release date got closer, the open world concept was scrapped. Some of the planned missions were scrapped. Only one mission, a prototype called B30, ended up in the game as a mission, bringing the total number to 10. This was also the result of some levels being reused. Microsoft game writers Eric Tronsman and Baron Boren performed last-minute rewrites to the game's story, and to make matters worse, 4 months before the game's launch, the multiplayer component was initially not fun at all, so it was scrapped and rebuilt from scratch. And even though team members from the defunct Bungie West were brought on after the completion of Oni, it still resulted in some employees sleeping in their workstations to get that son of a bitch working. So yeah, mental. Ed Fries described the period before the console's launch as chaotic, stating, "You've got to imagine this environment of panic combined with adrenaline, but money's mostly no object at the same time. So we were spending lots of it trying to do all this crazy stuff." This is especially true when, like I mentioned, a first-person shooter on a console was ridiculous at the time. But even so, the now titled Halo Combat Evolved was released alongside the Xbox and other games on November 15, 2001. It wasn't instant, but over time, it sold over 1 million copies for the next 5 months, and during that time, the game received overwhelming critical acclaim. Even today on Metacritic, it sits on a 97 out of 100, a stunning achievement as Gary Whitta of Official Xbox Magazine would describe it as. So, with all of that chaos and success out of the way, let's get into the game synopsis. This is courtesy of Miriani of IMDb, with some added notes by me, by the way. Mankind is being destroyed by a conglomerate of alien races, all under the flag of the Covenant. A human spaceship, the Pillar of Autumn, is under attack and has no chance to survive, but the only hope for mankind is for the Spartan II Forged Master Chief to make sure that the Covenant do not get a hold of the ship's AI, called Cortana, and thus discovering the location of Earth. But the survivors of the ship are stranded on an alien ring planet called Halo, and everything is stacked against them. It becomes a desperate battle as the brave crew, led by the Master Chief, or Spartan 117, and the AI Cortana try to survive the Covenant's assault. But upon doing so, both factions discover many secrets about the ring, one of them being a horrific and disgustingly deadly force that will affect both sides at the same time. And now for my thoughts. The version I played was the MCC version, but I played it with classic graphics and classic music. Right from the opening ambience, music, and shot, I was already hooked. The story as a whole is nothing to write home about. However, the presentation and visual storytelling is superb. I love that in games, when the dialogue is not needed and it lets the player witness something with their own eyes and find out what the world is all about, what secrets it holds, and so much more. I was paying close attention to the details that were presented to me. Wonder, mystery, excitement, I was feeling all of it. And of course, halfway through the game, I was feeling something else. Fear, because there is a twist that new players would not see coming. But after that, I was feeling frustration, then excitement towards the end. The game controls super well, even in 2025. Master Chief's actions are solid, they are responsive, and it is very easy to use the control scheme. And the enemy AI, depending on the difficulty, is very good when it comes to finding the player. On easy and normal, it feels pretty simple, but on heroic and legendary, they are more challenging. And the enemies, mainly the Covenant, do change based on the difficulty, and I like that. That means the game is testing me to see what my skill is at first hand, and it seems that I passed. I played the game on heroic, and it feels like a breeze in most, but frustration in some. A perfect balance. The grunts are the cannon fodder that I easily deleted into the next dimension. The jackals are much tougher, relying on their shields to protect them, and they can drain the Chief's energy shield. There are many ways to defeat them, but the little opening when they are firing their plasma pistol will do, or just chuck a grenade at them. The hunters are heavily armored and they can fire an explosive projectile, but they easily die in one shot in the back by a pistol or sniper. Elites are much like the player, same skill in most, yet aggressive in some, even on higher difficulties when those elites can carry swords. But I was able to drain their shields by unloading, meleeing, or overcharging the plasma pistol and switch to the regular pistol, I'll get to that in a second, and shoot that split lips in the face. Or I just sneakily get behind them, hit them in the back for an insta-kill, and proceed to teabag their dead corpse. Yes, I did that in the very first level. Speaking of shooting, the weapon selection is pretty standard. The AR, the pistol, the shotgun rain, the sniper, the rocket launcher, the plasma pistol and rifle, the fuel rod cannon, though I can't use it for some reason in a single player, and the needler, though I rarely use it. But regardless, there are many ways to shoot my enemies into the next galaxy. But I am reminded that even though I have a regenerative shield, I still need to find some health packs. Yes, this game does have health packs, and thankfully I was able to look for them, or it was just right there for me to pick it up. It's especially useful when it comes to finding the third faction. And unfortunately, there are some problems with this game that I have that includes that third faction. While I do enjoy the reveal, presence, and purpose in the story, at most points, I was feeling annoyed or worse, frustrated when it comes to finding the Flood, or as I like to call them, the Flood. While the Covenant have multiple ways of attacking me, the Parasite only has two. Stand in place, fire a bullet for 5 years, or run towards me like a hungry dog. It can be very challenging to downright infuriating when it comes to them using weapons, including the rocket launcher. Those guys can kiss my ass. Another thing that can kiss my ass is some of the level design. The first half of the game's level design is great. The Pillar of Autumn, Halo, Silent Cartographer, and even Assault Control Room, though the latter not fully. There are mostly copy-paste rooms that are completely unneeded. 343 Guilty Spark is one of the best levels for the reveal, but the level after this is not. In fact, I detest the library, repetitive areas, and an unlimited wave of the undead space horde. The shotgun and rocket are useful against them, but not when they use an Uno reverse card on me. And of course, you have the backtracking. In terms of multiplayer, sure, but in single player level designs, no thank you. 2 Betrayals, Keys, and the Maw are guilty of that, though they do have slight changes so it doesn't become too repetitive. I'll tell you what isn't repetitive, the sound. The voice acting is well done. These people may not be well known at the time, but when they are heard, it is instantly recognizable. I love the portrayals of Cortana, Keys, the Chief, the Monitor, and the Sergeant who doesn't have a name yet but will become Avery Johnson. The rest of the cast is very well done. I cannot get over how many times I tried not to laugh at the grunts' dialogue, or hearing their screams when I blow them up and send them flying into the next galaxy. Another thing that I love is the music. Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore provided the music and ambience, and holy God's mother did they succeed, from enchanted mystery to epic status. From the more calmer moments to vibing beats, from head-bopping beats to rockin' head-banging, from suspenseful tension to suspicious tension, from horrifying terror to hair-raising spectacle. I can go on. Not bad for a guy who came up with the main melody while driving to work. No, I'm not kidding, this one actually happened. What a pair of geniuses. Everyone praises Martin, but Mike deserves some props too. Well done by these two. Another thing I want to mention is multiplayer. I do like it, though I do have some problems. Firstly, some matches, if not all of them, can be easily summed up as blah blah blah, you're dead. This is all thanks to everyone's secondary, the Magnum pistol. It is, simply put, aside from the rocket and sniper, overpowered as shit. Another issue that I have is that some maps that support 4v4 battles don't fit well with big team battles such as Capture the Flag or Slayer. Blood Gulch and Sidewinder are perfect for those, but on smaller maps, no thank you. The last glaring issue that I have are the spawn points. I wish I can go 2 seconds without getting shot in the head, riddled with bullets, my skull bashed in, or blown up into next Tuesday. Simply put, the multiplayer is fun, but can be punishing at points. On MCC, I can use skins on my weapons in multiplayer and even in single player, though I did not showcase this. Which leads me to Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. It looks meh, but there are a lot of things that could have been done without. Mainly the lighting and graphics, especially in 343 Guilty Spark, where it looked from looking like an abyss and a swamp to a lit up sanctuary and a rainforest. Graphically, an attempt was made to make it look like Bungie's final Halo installment, that's a spoiler, but I feel as though it doesn't work for the most part. And the remastered music kind of doesn't have that same charm as the original, though I do like the remastered sounds, more punchier than before. But, like I said, you can switch these things to the original graphics and music in the missions menu, so there is that option, though it is a recommendation for those who are planning to play Halo Combat Evolved for the first time. As for my final opinion on Halo Combat Evolved, despite my flaws with it, it is still great. As the title suggests, inadvertent or not, it evolved FPS games for years to come. Hell, other games from different companies would copy this method years afterwards. That's how much this game has influenced the genre. And for that, I thank it. It is available for the Xbox Series consoles via Game Pass and PC via the Xbox app and Steam. In the next playthrough and episode of the podcast, we'll be taking a look at a year that was peak gaming, starting off with a childhood favorite of mine. And if you want that and more of this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to JDF VA, my main channel, and share it to all your friends and family. This has been JDF signing off. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a good day.